things. Trying to find a way to keep them short and sweet, but also informative. So welcome, Mike. There'll be a few people sliding in here. Mike. So we will start and just out of courtesy, we are recording because we do post these. Be warned, I do cold call people so that we have participation, so you won't be sitting there listening for an hour. So if at any point you get asked a question you have no idea or don't want to answer, you can just pass and we'll move along. But just particularly those of you who are maybe new, sorry, I'm going to cold call you first because you're my new friends. That's just the way it works. Just trying to keep people active and engaged. So that's me. I'm the Director of Membership Growth and Development for Ohio Soccer Association, and spent a lot of time in soccer. I'm officially getting old, but as I said to a group yesterday, if I don't help you, you leave here in an hour feeling like you've gotten something out of this, then I've wasted your time. So hopefully that's not the case, but we will try. Ohio Soccer Association was just formed officially in August, and the main part that's of interest to me is to support, inspire, and perhaps help unlock potential. So if there's groups out there that you're interested in finding out what you can do for yourself, that's sort of where I come into the picture. Just like kids, if folk are interested in helping themselves, that's great. If they're not, that's okay too. But we're trying to do some things with the retention and development piece. And I asked them the last couple of trips, I won't go through it again, but the 70% is roughly the number of the percent of kids we lose by the early teens. And somehow in this process, we can do a better job of that. But this comes down to what can we do with player retention, even before we even talk about getting to development. And that fits in nicely with the US soccer mission, which is for the first time they've said we want soccer to be the preeminent sport in the country. And that's a bold statement for US soccer. They've never said that before. But with 4 World Cups on the women's side and hopefully a better showing at the next World Cup for our men, that maybe is not so far away. So we want to try to improve the coaching so that we can get better environments, we can keep more kids around, and then hopefully we get better kids and our soccer community grows. So this is the 3rd of our 6 webinars, and we will come back in January. I'm still trying to figure out whether the 2 in January are too close, or the January-February ones are too close together, but they are going to be related, but I'll make that decision as I start planning January. But tonight we're going to talk about positional awareness and development and what we can do in training to try to improve that. Just one, before we get into the chat room quickie there, just one little contextual piece here. The game is based on technique. There is no question that the game is based on technique, and there is no question that technical players are more skillful in general. So what we're going to talk about tonight is just one component of training, which is how do we deal with positional play? How do we help kids get a better context to what's going on in the soccer field? If anybody starts to ask, where's technique, or where does this fit in, or where's that? It probably does, and you're more than welcome to bring it up at the moment that it sort of becomes an issue for you. But we're just going to stick to positional coaching tonight on the assumption that if that is a part of what we do in training, there's a better chance that we've got players who will understand what the game looks and feels like. But it doesn't negate the fact that there are other components to the coaching process and the player development process that don't necessarily involve you play this position. So I'll just leave that as statement up front. All right, so in the chat room, if you could do just write in whatever comes to mind. What's the difference between technique and skill? We're going to do 4 quick chat room answers just to get us situated. So what's the difference between technique and skill as far as you are concerned? Either you can't see that or nobody's typing. Does everybody see the question? And does everybody see the chat room? Marcy and Ken and JD, I'm looking at your faces and nobody else's. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the chat room? Okay, good. So what's the difference between technique? Goran is saying context, which is actually a good answer. Goran's the only one who's answering. Oh, there we go. Skill is your ability to use the technique and context around a game. Fantastic. Well done, Jessica. We could probably just stop there to save us time for discussions later. Technique, ability to control, manipulate the ball. Skill is technique applied. Yeah, same thing, David. Good. So what we're looking at really is just technique is the mechanical piece, and skill is being able to use whatever technique people have available under pressure or in a game situation to try to solve a problem. We spend an awful lot of time trying to make players technical without necessarily wondering how to make them skillful. So that's part of this challenge that I'm going to present to you tonight. Mechanics of what you do. I think good. So the next chat room question of 2 of 4 relates to that one. How many surfaces of the foot do we have to manipulate a soccer ball? If you're not quite sure, look at your foot and count them. Ken, you had that kind of look on your face there that says, I don't know about that. Just look at your foot. Yeah, Kevin, you can't go all of them. How many? We got the 6, right? So think about this. We've got the, the question I'm going to pose here is this. If we put the ball in the goal in the World Cup final and it's with the toe, the heel, the top, the bottom, and the outside or the inside, will it still count? And of course, the answer is yes. And that's the difference between sometimes we think about passing and everybody tries to pass the ball with the inside of their foot. And we've got 5 more surfaces that we can use to do that. But when we start to talk about, oh, I'm going to teach this, do we simply go to the go-to, which is the most obvious, instead of saying, how do we get the ball from A to B? Doesn't matter how it gets there, as long as it's being used. So that's the second one. All right, next one. Assuming good coaching, whatever that is in your own mind, what can we develop more quickly? Tactical awareness or technical proficiency? Well done, Mark, you got the 6. JD's sticking his flag in the tactical awareness camp. So is Nathan. Mark is sitting on a fence. Tricky question from Goran. Ooh, Goran, would you like to come in and explain that?
Yes, I think in the context of perhaps street soccer, there will be an issue of technical, and then in the terms of team development, then you will have to go with the tactical part of it.
So if we are in training, and this is actually where I'm going with this, and we're not going to spend a lot of time because you can go and mull that over when you get home or when we're done. The thought here is if we come into practice, people's technical level is what they have. And it takes a lot longer to develop technique than it would an understanding of tactical pieces. For example, if you just say to a kid, look before you receive the ball, we can fix that quicker than we can say to a player, drive the ball 25 yards onto someone's chest. just as an example. Take the ball out of the air when it's not thrown to you, cushion the ball, wedge the ball. It takes a lot longer to develop a habit or comfort level with technique than it does typically to help players develop ideas about the game. So we'll just leave it at that. That's a premise that I'm going to put out there, and it's all coded into why I kind of come from the sport or coaching from a games approach. Is I've found that we can do an awful lot to help players understand the game, even although technically they're still at the same level. We can help them make decisions about the game by reading the game. For example, a simple thing, players will turn into trouble. Players will routinely try to pass the ball through an opponent because we haven't said to them, can you see what's in front of you? If this person in front of you or the persons in front of you are wearing the wrong colored shirt, there's another way we can solve this problem. And so we can help them read the game in a way that whatever technique they have, that's not going to change, but we can quickly help players who are somewhat thoughtful. Look, if there's no space to go forward, the game is not telling us to go forward. Let's see if we can do something else. So simple ideas like that are tactical awareness pieces that we can certainly make a difference very quickly or quicker than we could to work on some kind of a finite skill. And again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. I'm not saying that we don't have an obligation to help kids who don't understand technique to develop that, but just as a coaching approach, we can certainly make some headway teaching the game. Okay, and the last of the chat room quickies. Let's see what you think of that. This is because I was a PE teacher. And as a PE teacher, we went through our drills and you got drill, 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 and it came to the point where the game started and we basically folded our arms and that was it. We got into the game, stop. And we just let the kids play. Mark, I'm going to ask you to jump in and give your thought on that because that could be a perfectly legitimate answer based on how you're looking. Okay, Marcy, same thing. All right, I'm good. We've got disagreements because that would be a good thing. Mark, I think you were first. If you would like to dissent, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just finishing my dinner and I was crunching on a cracker. I apologize. The specific question was?
Yeah, because we quite a few. I think everybody's going to disagree with me, which is great. Actually, that'd be fantastic. You were first one up, so I'm asking you, what do you see? What do you do that would suggest you would disagree with that?
I disagree. Pardon me, because that gives you the opportunity playing against other people, playing against numbers, that you can demonstrate. You know, we just practice whatever we just practiced, and now we're doing a play portion of the practice, and it gives you the opportunity to say, did you learn that? Did you pick up that skill? Do you understand it? Did you attempt it? Not necessarily were you able to accomplish it, but gives you an opportunity to say, okay, did you think about doing X? Remember, we just worked on X. So that's why I disagree. Okay,
and that's a perfectly legitimate argument, no question. Right, Marcy, would you like to jump in too?
Sure. So very similar. I mean, once you move into a scrimmage, part of a practice or even a scrimmage against another team, it allows you to coach the exact drills or technical skills that you put into play in the drill section.
Okay. What both of you have told me is I asked the question in a poor way. Yeah, you're good, Marcy. What you've both told me is I've asked the question in a poor way. Let me go to one more. Jessica, you were the third one up. What would be your contribution to the conversation? What do you coach? Let me ask the question another way. What do you coach in scrimmages?
Tactical.
Keep going. Yeah, tell me what you coach. Sorry, I'm not looking for a right answer because both Marcy and Mark, I think it was, is it Mark? Yeah, both Marcy and Mark actually gave answers that make total sense. And so that would be a disagree and making a case for disagree. So no problem.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I just think it gives you the opportunity to coach within the game, I guess. Allows you to ask questions, allows them to make mistakes that would lead you to better coaching. There's so many things that I can't break down before a practice or a session that just sort of come up based on what they're telling me they need within that session. So I think the scrimmage is probably the biggest part of training because it allows me to see how they're implementing their skills or their techniques into skills within that play.
Okay. And again, I agree with all three of you in that if coaching continues, it's not just we get to play and we stop, which is one of those things that is a frustration for me as a coach, is that too often now the kids, hey, you do my drills and you get 5 minutes of free play, roll it out, let's play free play. Where I think I heard similarities from three of you that I'm going to try to contrast is actually what we coach in the scrimmages. And so we'll see if that comes out as we go along. And I will go to the next slide if I can make it work.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, please.
So my question would be, we've played other leagues who have professional coaches as the coaches, and they don't really coach during the game.
Yep. Okay.
Whether it's an actual game or a scrimmage. So how does that play into the point that you just made?
It may, let me, maybe it's going to the end and we'll come back. What happens in practice, wow, I'm just looking at my fonts at the bottom here. They've gone all over the place. What happens in practice, if it replicates what happens in the game, there's less need to coach the game. There is also a philosophy that says, I'm just going to let the players figure it out. And that also has merit, as long as there's been some practice environment that replicates what they're doing in a game. And now you're just using it as a check for understanding. The other side again is where, because there's been just drills in practice, there's been no game coaching. And so the coaches can sometimes get frustrated with what's going on in the game and they're trying to coach the game blow by blow. So somewhere in that continuum of saying nothing and saying everything, there's probably a happy medium that every coach will find their landing spot based on their personality and their understanding of what process we're engaging in. So keep that thought in mind. Let's see where we end up, because I think that's one of my last slides, is to come back and discuss that.
Tom, can I interject something really quick?
Go on, Scott.
I coach for Kings. A lot of times what you'll see us do is we're not going to coach from the sidelines. We wait till that player comes off. And then a lot of times we'll just quickly have maybe a 30-second conversation. Whether they're doing something right or wrong, it's kind of, our attempt to ask them the question at that time to say, okay, what are you seeing out there? Where can you say they're having problems finding space? Let's say, are you finding players that are open? Are you seeing that? Are you able to come up? And for us, and I learned this from the head coach I learned as an assistant, 30-second conversation can change a kid's entire mentality. We practice and practice and practice, and we usually had anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes of actual scrimmage time.
Good.
And that actually helps out. But we have older players too. So our practice is an hour and a half. You can't really do that with, say, a U6, U7, U8, even possibly up to U10. But once you get up to like U13, U14, and that, I really don't have to do a lot of coaching from the sideline. When they come off, I can say, hey, you need to watch this player or something like that, and just something really quick, and that jogs their memory of, oh, okay, yeah, let's do a give and go on this guy.
when you say, yeah, fair enough. That there's a continuum here, right, of how we get involved. And some people do want to chat when there's a halftime and just let the kids play. Do you ask them to recognize tactical cues, or just when this happens, you should have thought about X, however you exchange that information with the players? Are you talking about tactical cues about the game, or just in this situation, what should you have done different?
Well, we try to let them make that decision on the tactical cues. Of, did they miss something, or did they see something? And you have to realize we do both good and bad.
Mhm.
We point out a lot of stuff that, hey, you're doing this right. You're looking at this. You're looking at that. What else can you do? I saw you were in this situation. What do you think you could do with that? So it's real quick, little small questions.
Yep.
And it's, halftime, we get 5-10 minutes maybe, and we can go over an entire game scenario with them really, really quick of, okay, this is what we're seeing you guys doing. You're bunching up here when you really should be opening up. Down on the, on the attacking side, hey, we're getting stuck in the middle. Why can't we, what can we do to reset the situation? And of course, they're going to come back and say, oh, let's take the ball back out and bring it back around the perimeter to get it back in. So we let them work off those cues a lot of times. So we actually use, if you look at the play scenario that US Soccer is teaching, that's exactly what we're doing. And I will tell you, it works.
Oh yeah, no question. It's funny, they took credit for it, but it's not new, but we'll give them, they can take credit because it's got the flag on it, and I like that. That's okay. All right.
Coach John's been coaching like 30 years. So he's like, I've been doing this for years.
All right, so let's fly along. We've got, for those of you who are not familiar, there's a set of standard positional numbers that are unique to the United States. If we were in another country, these numbers may be different, but just as far as the US numbering system, the 4 players up the middle, all the midfield players and the striker, they clearly don't play like that, but it's just to separate the fact that the defensive midfield player tends to play at the back of the midfield, and the attacking midfield player tends to play at the front. And the 8 would call a general midfield player because they have a little bit more flexibility or movement within the team. But the 3 of those players could be side by side at any particular moment based on how we set them up as in their roles in the team. But just to make it as simple as possible, that should clarify the difference between a 6 and 8 and a 10, and clearly the 9's at the front. And the 2 and the 7 go on the right, and the 3 and the 11 go on the left. And the 4 and the 5 are separated, with the 5 being the left center back and the 4 being the right center back. And that is the standard numbering system. We don't necessarily need one of each. And by the way the coach sets up the roles, they can be in quite different formation. There can be 3 8s if you want, 2 10s, 2 8s, 1 center back. It doesn't matter. So it's more important the players know what we're asking them to do rather than do we have the right number. But just in general, we should have some sense of what the positional numbers are. All right. So here's the first little piece of this. This to me is the entry level game for teaching positions. And this would be a game that we could teach with you 8s. And the best case scenario is actually for the goalkeepers to be us, the coaches. Little 8s, probably a little bit of a challenge to be goalkeepers, but as far as teaching goes, putting the adults in the goal and setting up this game is, to me, the starting point of positional development. And just to explain the game, there's a halfway line, and you can have 1 or 2 scenarios. The ball has to be passed over the halfway line, or the ball can be dribbled over the halfway line. Both create different tactical situations. And then the other piece is that you have 3 field players, and only 1 of them can be, only 2 of them can be in the same half together. So whether it's 2 in the front or 2 in the back, it doesn't matter. And they can certainly rotate. You'll notice that I've listed them all as number 8s because there is a lot of movement with younger kids. We don't really care who plays in the front or the back, but we do care that there's a diamond that's set up when the goalkeeper has the ball between the front and the back and the 2 sides. So with that said, what tactical concepts can we develop in this game form. And this is getting into when I asked the question, what do we stop coaching when the games start? Now the question is, all right, now we've got a game. What is it we can teach within games? So we'll go back to the chat room again, if you'd like to just post your thoughts there. Definitely build out the back. Okay, we side to side space, back to front space. Good. How to play forward. Yes, Mark. Good. Good, good. A couple of comments on keeping heads up, which is great. Yes, Ken. That might not be so easy with little kids though, Ken, but true. Mike,
Yeah, we're having trouble with that with our U8. Kids are always looking down and running into each other.
that will happen. How many have you got on the field?
We have 7.
All right, there's your problem.
Yeah.
There's your problem. Anything else? So most of you have gone, in fact, everybody except Mike's last comment there has gone, there we go, Goran. We probably won't get pressure cover balance per se with U8s, but we will get the idea of can we help them to stay together, at least to the point where they don't defend wide, but I'll get to that in a second. Anything else? So let's just say these were U10s instead of U8s. What would change? All right, that's good. We're getting a nice list. So Mike Gallagher, let me come to you staying in position and we'll start with that. What is the trigger moment for this game, given the way I've got it pictured here?
The trigger moment?
Yeah, there's a trigger that will let the players know that they're supposed to go find a position that's opens the game up, at least on the red side. So what is the trigger?
Oh, well, it looks like the ball is being played out to the right side initially.
Player has it.
Yeah, I'm not.
Which player has it? Which player has possession?
The goalie has it right now. He's playing it out.
Good.
She's playing it out.
Yeah, so if the goalkeeper has the ball, that's a trigger. And the conversation earlier with Scott there about tactical cues, the game is basically all about tactical cues. And the more we can help players understand what they're looking at, the faster they can read the game and do whatever they're going to do at that point. So when the goalkeeper has possession, the message to the red team here is just go form a diamond. You've got the player in the front and you got the 2 players on the side. But at least you've got an idea that when the goalkeeper gets the ball, we want to open the game up. And this is the advantage of having an adult in the game versus one of the kids, because the kids will typically get rid of the ball pretty quick where the adults will hold it. If you've got, say, U9s and U10s, that you can expect this game to look like this with kids, as opposed to, say, U8s where the goalkeepers are us. What about the the mentality for the defending team. So I'm going to stay with you, Mike, since you brought it up. What's the tactical cue with the opposing goalkeeper in possession? What is the game telling the white team?
Why you give me all the hard questions?
Because I'm going to get you to the right answer one way or the other. This is guided questioning. And if you
Well, they've got to shadow the players. So you have to look for who's coming into your area of the field, and then look for what are the open possibilities for a pass, and you want to cover those passes. That's what I would tell them.
All right, so let me go through, this is the guided questioning process for you. What's the most dangerous part of the field if I'm on the white team? Given that the ball is with the goalkeeper, what's the most dangerous part of the field? And I'll give you the loaded 50-50. Is it the middle where the goal is, or the sides where the open players are?
Oh, I think it's the sides.
So what's the objective of the game?
Well, to always have possession. So
Nope. No. Come on, just keep this on a very simple level. How do we know we've won?
score more.
Good. So what's the most important part of the field? Where the goal is, or where the open space is on the side? Would you rather defend the player and the ball goes closer to the goal, or would you rather protect the goal and the ball goes to the sides?
I would rather protect the goal for sure.
All right. So I've just had a conversation with you that I had with little players yesterday. And it's the same conversation. It would be the same conversation if we were in the World Cup final. There are basically principles, ideas that we want to try to help players understand. And the conversation I've just had with you would be the same conversation I've had with players. So if you put the context of the objective is to score more goals in the time allowed, and that the most dangerous part of the field is where the goal is, the white team will typically come in and defend the middle, which is the way I've got them set up here. So let me flip this back. Let me say I'm the goalkeeper and the two white players go and defend the two red players on the side. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to pick on somebody. Brian, are you with us? Brian Cox? Jeff Cavalli? Lloyd Martin? Anybody? Nathan Vaughan?
Lloyd Martin's here.
Lloyd, well done. All right. So what happens if I'm the goalkeeper and the two white players in the front half of the field go and stand beside the two wide players in red? Where do I pass the ball?
So make sure I understand the question from off the one who's the red team or the white team.
So I'm the goalkeeper for the red team. I've grown my hair out, so I've joined the red team. I'm the goalkeeper. And the two white defenders have gone to the side of the field. What would I do with the ball tactically that makes the most sense? Play to the side or play to the front?
I mean, I would tell my player that's up towards the goal to come back so the goalie can give him a pass directly up the middle.
Good, because now I've just taken two opponents out of the game with a pass. And because in any situation here, I can only shoot the ball, dribble the ball, or pass to three players. Given where the defenders go, it dictates how the game gets built out of the back. So if the defenders, in this case, the white team, defend the middle, the players on the side should be open so the goalkeeper can just play a 2v1 on the side and get one of those players out. If the two forwards go to the side of the field, then as the goalkeeper, if I can play to the player in the front part of the field, then I've just taken two opponents out of the game and I've given her a 1v1 in the front. What's the other tactical situation that relates to, and I'm going to look back to see who said this. Someone mentioned switching the point of attack. No, we're back in, couldn't find it. Who would like to give us the situation that it would make sense to change the ball from one side to the other?
Can you ask the question just a little differently?
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
Okay, let's just take the sequence forward. Let's just say the goalkeeper plays to the player on the right-hand side. Okay? Theoretically, who's the most open player on the field at that point? And why?
The goalie.
The goalie could be
The player on the left,
the player on the left. So explain what happens next.
because the two white attacking players are going to follow the ball to the player on the right.
Good. So defensively, we want to move where the ball goes as a group. So if the ball comes to the right side of the red team, the white players will typically follow the ball across towards the right side of the red team. That should leave the left defender open. And if you watch a professional game, maybe pay attention to this if you've never thought about it before. The most open player on a soccer field 99.9% of the time is the goalkeeper. The next most open player on the field is typically the far side fullback. So when the ball gets switched to the far side, that player typically has the most time and space of anybody on the field other than the goalkeeper, assuming the ball has come from one side to the other. That concept will come out pretty quickly in this kind of a game. As long as we say to the player on the far side, don't come in and duplicate the goalkeeper's job. We have to now give the goalkeeper responsibility to help us change the game across the back. And if we're doing this developmentally, we're now saying to the goalkeeper, you're not just someone who stops the ball and kicks it down the field. You're someone who actively participates in the build-up. And if we never tell young goalkeepers to do that, they'll probably never develop the insight and the skill. And we're going to lose goals because of it. But this is why practice has to be much more indicative or reflective of what the game demands are. Next thing about this little situation. Let's just say the ball has to be passed across to the forward. What would happen next? One of you has already put this as something tactically that you would see. And if I can pull this out, it would be Scott. And I'm going to go back to another one that someone mentioned that is creating space. Ken, who's got the toughest job of creating space in this game?
For this one, I would say the forward.
And I would agree with you because they're playing with their back to goal and typically they're marked, so they have to move. Where will inexperienced kids tend to go?
An experienced kid will probably go to the goal.
An inexperienced kid, I'm sorry, you didn't hear me.
Oh, inexperienced kid. Well, the ones on my team, they're always in the same position.
Okay.
They never want to go in front of the kids or make space. They always want to be like their buddies.
All right, so they'll stand still and they could get to the point where they'll stand at the line.
Yes.
We won't create space that way. So if you look at the field space, it's 35 by 25. That means it's quite a wide field, but that now also gives the players in the front the opportunity to run to the side and open up space. So if the space is too small, they won't move. The other piece that's important for me, particularly with U10s, not so much with U8s, is when the ball gets played forward, offside there becomes part of the game. If U9, U10 play with offside, and we've got somewhat inexperienced players, when that ball gets played forward, now offside has to be part of it because somebody is going to come and support from the back. One of those two defenders is going to come out from the back to support the game, potentially to make a 2v1, but probably a 2v2. So one of the other things that tactically you get from this game is that if you play the ball forward, you support it from behind. And it doesn't have to be the person who played the ball, but one of those two defenders will come forward and support the game so that there's at least two attackers in the other half. So there's another concept tactically that we get from just this little 4v4 game. why have I got the condition that all three can't be in the same half? Who would like to try that one? What am I creating within the team if all three players can't be together in the same half of the field?
Balance.
Good, thank you, Jessica. So now I'm starting to introduce this concept that we can't all be together in the same place. So if in this case I've got 3 8s, only 2 of the 8s can play together, the third one has to stay home. This could be a midfield line, it could be a back line, but it's a team concept that says one of two things. We have to go forward to support the ball as it moves forward closer to the goal, but we also have to keep some balance behind so that A, we can circulate the ball, or B, we can defend. The other side is that if on the attacking team, if I've got a player who stays up, now the immediate thought when I win the ball is, can I play forward? Can we look to counterattack? Because the best case scenario might be 1-on-0 with the goalkeeper because the defender was asleep, or it may be 1-on-1, or it may be 2v1 if I can play the ball forward and go and support in the other half. So you get a lot of 1v1, 1v2, 2v1, 2v2 in either half of the field, and the game will transition quite quickly, which is why I've got a max here of 4-minute rounds. If you look in the yellow box, I don't want this game probably going more than 4 minutes because it's tiring. There's a lot of movement back and forth on what is a relatively big field. If you've got 9s and 10s, what would we tell the white shirt defender about her starting position relative to the forward?
Stand behind her.
Good.
So the white player would stand behind the red player.
Excellent. So a starting position is always, when we talk about defending, a typically good starting position is closer to the goal and closer to the inside of the field. And as we get, so I think, Marcy, are you the one with the 11s, or was that Jessica?
No, it's me.
Okay, so you've now got at an age where you've got U11s, starting positions become something that they could probably pick up relatively quickly. And if they're good enough players, they'll already have it, but that's for you to decide. But starting positions, if you look at the white team, the starting position of the two forward players is towards the middle of the goal. And as the ball goes outside, now you've got other issues that you can bring in. How many of your players would run to get in front of the ball and the game would cut back inside them? Do you have a significant number of players who would defend that way at that age?
So you said one would go to defend and one would come back, cut back in. Is that what you said?
Let's just say the ball went to, in this case, the right side of the red team.
Okay.
And the forward comes across to defender.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon. In fact, it's more common than not that a defender at that point would just try to get in front of the ball between the goal and the player and open up the inside of the field. Would that be typical of your girls, or are they a little bit more advanced than that?
You mean if they're offensive? Is that what you mean?
Defending. Yeah.
Okay.
So they would basically, if you can see my cursor, they would defend sort of in this position as opposed to this position.
Yes, I would say that the first girl would go straight at the ball.
Just run at the ball and maybe get here an occasion where she would open up the inside of the field again.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then the second girl would shift over.
Yep.
You know, some of my challenge sometimes is the second girl gets concerned that the first girl is going to get beat. And so then she actually is in position too closely, that then allows for them sometimes to both get beat, which is a worst case scenario.
Yeah, and that's okay because they're young players. And once, as long as we know to expect that, that's fine, because it gives us a context for their age, their skill level, their thinking about the game. But it also gives us, it gives us a chance to get repetition in a small-sided game where they've got lots of game situations that are going to repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is my premise for the talk tonight. We don't really spend an awful lot of time we don't appreciate how much detail is in small games. And the more detail we understand about this, then the more we can bring to play two. For those of you who've referenced play, practice, play, this can be practice for sure. But in some ways, the end point here should be the game itself and coaching the game. When I asked the three of you, or the first three who volunteered an answer, and you said application of technique, that's what play, practice, play tells you. My issue with that is that we have to look at the context of the game and see where pieces fit, because it doesn't help us a lot coaching whatever 2v1 is if we don't identify which players are supposed to create the 2v1. In this case, it's the players coming from the back to play with the front player. And then you've got a situation where you can see where the 2v1 actually is, rather than just some random version of 2v1. So it's a bit more specific. So let's move on. Can someone just come on and tell me what the difference is between this game, which is the second version of the same game, and this game? So here's the baseline, and here's the change, and why. What am I getting from this game as a developmental tool that takes me forward from here?
Well, you're just adding more lines, so I'm guessing that your girls are required to stay within the bounds of the different dashed lines. Is that correct?
What would the dashed lines be?
Well, I'm guessing they're zones. Like you set it up as different zones.
No.
Like the last game, you said that the one that only two girls could be in the same space at a time.
Yep, that would be this one. And that
Right.
was just to separate the front of the team from the back of the team. And that is, as a coach, we always have to know what we're giving up to get something. And I know I'm giving up something in this game, which is free movement of players.
Mm-hmm.
And if I now take these lines and I use them as offside lines. So let me lead you on that one, Marcy. If these are offside lines, what have I done to the game? And how is that more difficult for the players? But more natural.
So if they cross over the line, then they're offsides. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. But it also then, it creates a more natural component to the game, which is also a challenge for players who are perhaps more inexperienced.
Okay.
So, for example, is there anything that limits when I move from this version of the game to this? Is there anything that's going to help stop this game becoming potentially more bunched?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Marcy.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just may not have the right answer, but this looks more, so it looks like the far right red player has to stay back in a defensive posture. So you have more offensive area of the field. So the left back and the center forward are now more offensive minded more throughout the field. So they have to, it's less of a build out scenario, more offensive.
It's all build up, Mike, and I appreciate that the fact that we're only looking at a two-dimensional drawing, and that was a perfectly sensible observation. The fact that the goalkeeper is building the game up it's still build up, right? Because of it's coming from in front of the goal, it's still considered we're building up from our part of the field, the back part of the field to get forward and score goals. The right defender, if she goes to that position with the goalkeeper in possession and the white player comes to her, and I'm going to put the cursor out here. So this player you mentioned seemed like she was in here because it was zonal. Yes?
Right. So she's restricted from going past that dotted line.
Okay. Well, if I told you that she's not, but she came here and this player now comes with her, what is that opening up for the goalkeeper?
Oh, the center of the field.
Good. So by coming to the side, it puts this player in a dilemma in the same way that this player is in a dilemma because this player is over here. Let me take where my cursor is. If I put this player up here, if I put this player up here and I take this player and I move her up here, Why is that a problem for the red team? And again, I'll just show you again. The left player comes roughly about here, and the right player roughly comes about here. Why is that a problem for the red team?
Well, it limits the opportunities for the goalie of where to play the ball.
Beautiful. And that becomes part of what we have to help players understand is if you're at the back of the team, in many cases, your job is just to force the opponents to make a choice, because if we give the players enough space, you can't mark players and space at the same time. And so because I've exaggerated the diamond shape of the reds here, the white players have a choice. They can either come and defend the players and open up the middle, or they can come to the middle, as I've painted in this picture, and open up the outside. The typical challenge is that the back players will go and make a real diamond instead of a rhombus, and they'll go into the midfield area, which makes it really difficult for the goalkeeper to find a pass because they're always playing across the defenders. So it does make a difference, and it's an area for us to provide some input so that we help the players understand what their roles are and how they can create problems for the opponent. Let's talk about skill real quick. What skills, and I'm talking here about the application of technique. So let's go back to the first thought. What would this give lots of repetition with in terms of skill?
The long pass.
A long pass from the goalkeeper to the front player, check. What else we got?
Passing and receiving.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Finding space.
You mean in terms of moving away from a defender?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Good.
Shooting.
Absolutely. Would there be opportunities where I have space in front of me to run with the ball?
Sure.
What about the other two applications of dribbling? Defensive approach, Brian Cox wrote. Absolutely, well done. One-on-one skills, Nathan, yes. And one-on-one could be I'm playing with my back to my opponent's goal, or I'm facing my opponent's goal with a defender in front of me. So there's the three applications of dribbling, which is running at an opponent, being defended by an opponent, and running at space. All three of those will show up. So passing, receiving, shooting, all of the basic techniques we'll find in this game. Receiving the ball with back to goal. A couple of you mentioned the idea of vision. So in this game, it would be perfectly legit to, and the way I would do it simply is to call a foul if one of the players receives the ball with no idea where she's going. So if you have no concept of what's around you and you receive the ball, you're going to play slower. So that would, to me, that would be a foul, be a perfect example of how we can teach skill in really any kind of a game form, but we've still got the basic ideas of attacking, defending, transitioning. We've got the idea of spacing, and we've got all of those technical pieces that come out as the applications of technique, which is skill. We can also use the goalkeeper to come out and play and make the game, because if she stands there, maybe the passes are a little more difficult. If she simply walks forward with the ball, any pass probably gets shorter. So we've got those pieces. Just to go back to the lines, the biggest challenge when I move from that game, which is the line across the half, to this game, is that the reminder for the forward is the fact that you can't be offside until you pass the line. So it's a more natural way to get the forwards to spread the game out when the goalkeeper gets the ball. But the fact that there's no natural constraint on where they can move clearly makes it a little bit more challenging for kids who don't have a positional sense, and particularly if we've got goalkeepers who won't just take their time putting the ball back in play. So let's move along. Now what? So what's changed in this game and what's the tactical significance of this? Dave Abel, do you want to have a bash? Anything you want to add?
Obviously, we got more players,
Okay, what position?
and what jumps out at me is there's a center midi, like 3 lines as opposed to maybe 2.
Yep. I've actually mismarked this. This should be labeled as a 5 and a 4 and an 8 and a 9. So just noticing my own problem here. Yeah, so we've got a midfield player. So if we go back to this, what's actually changed from this arrangement to this arrangement? What have I added? That's probably why I kept 3 8s. Maybe it wasn't a typo. What's actually changed, Dave?
So you mean formation wise or shape wise?
Yeah.
You got a triangle, and then there's a player in the middle of the triangle.
So does the back of the team look like that?
No. So now you have 3 in the back.
Nope. So if you look at these two, I've got someone on the left, someone on the right, someone in the middle, and I've got a diamond. If I go to this one, I've still got the same diamond, but I've added one player, and I've now added the midfield, but I've just added the player in the front.
Oh, okay.
See what I've done? So there's the 4, the 3 8s and the goalkeeper. There's the 3 8s and the goalkeeper again, but I've added the front player, which is now the 9.
Okay.
So I've added the forward line, the midfield line. So this is the first, to me, this is the first team we can put out where nobody does somebody else's job. There's only one forward. There's only one midfield player. There's 2 defenders, who I've labeled them as 8s. And we've got 1 goalkeeper. So it's a clear distinction of where do I go relative to the goalkeeper having possession of the ball. So the 9 opens up the game to the front. The other 3 players do exactly as they did before, just create space. So it's just added one layer of complexity. The field space is larger. It's now 50 yards by 30 yards. And just for those who haven't been with us before, the rule of thumb is for every player on one team, it's 10 yards. So 5 players, 50 yards. The width is about 2/3 of that. So if it's 25 yards, if it's 30 yards, that can change, but that gives us at least a starting point to give the players a field space that makes sense to the numbers. Because one of the things, if you ask your players, would you rather play in a shoebox or would you rather play in an area where you've got time and space to think? They will unanimously tell you, I don't like playing in shoeboxes because I can't make good decisions. They will literally tell you that every time you ask them. So now the goalkeeper's got a chance to play forward, and just in the interest of time here, we can now create the same scenarios we had before, but now we can create a situation where the 8 and the 9 will play off of each other. The 2 defenders, they've still got an issue to mark whichever forward stays high. If you would encourage a white forward to stay out. So one of the 2 red defenders will go forward and the other one will stay and mark the striker. And the goalkeeper becomes the relevant player here in terms of circulating the game. The other thing that becomes important, and we can start to see it here, is if the ball goes into either the 8 or the 9, it's very common that we can get the opposite side fullback to come and join the game. So if you often thought, how do I get my players to come out of the back and when? We've only got 2 players to pay attention to here. And if I play the ball, if I'm this player here and I play the ball forward, well, I can go and join the game. That's great. But if the ball goes into the middle and the other player gets brought out over here, now you've got 2 ways to get players out of the back in very repetitive situations, and they will both show up repeatedly in a game like this. So you're now starting to develop patterns that are just natural patterns because there's only 4 players on the field plus the goalkeeper. So the game will naturally assume a rhythm to it and a pattern to it that's all based on the spacing. And this is when you talk about play, practice, play and play 2. To me, there's not enough help in helping players understand, what do I do on the field when we're playing a game? Which to me is the premise of this whole conversation. All right, moving along for time. What's the now change? So now I do have my 4, 5 identified. I've got a 6 and an 8 and a 9. And the 8 is the general midfield player. The 6 is still now making the diamond between the 4 and the 5. So what changes in this game? What do I have to spend more time helping the players understand? And which players in particular?
Well, you've restricted space a little bit by moving the offside line out 2 more yards and adding another body. So
Yeah, and that's
players
because,
are going to have to.
yeah, and the field's a little bit longer too. And I'll just chip this information in. The offside line being deep is actually a little bit problematic because it does stretch the game out. And in some ways it gets a little bit artificial, but the longer the field, the further we want to bring the offside line if we're going to use one up towards the half. So it's sort of an inconvenient tool that I use, but it's efficient, but it's also not realistic because it's not the halfway line, but it's a really effective teaching tool. I know what I'm giving up by putting it in there, but I wouldn't say it's, I just need to know that I'm giving stuff up that I want to take back at some point. All right, so Steve's got the 2 midfield players. Brian is the spacing with a 6, the 8, and the 9. And that is the area of the field then that becomes the important coaching point for this. Because if we move back a layer, the relationship between the 3 players in front of the goalkeeper is still the same. And we go to this game and it's still the same. So the back part of the team is still the same, but now the complication comes, as Stephen and Brian have said, because now I got 3 players in the middle of the field and they have to find space away from each other. But that's one of the lessons that players have to learn is, yeah, we play in the same line, but we can't do the same job. And again, this moment in the game is always predicated on the goalkeeper's got the ball. What does that tell us to do? So it's an easy situation to manufacture if you play between 2 goals with goalkeepers, which I tend to do a lot. Last thought, and I think we don't have time for this, but this is an idea of roles. And given what I've tried to introduce tonight, would anybody like to answer that question in red? Why is understanding player roles essential to better coaching? And this goes back to, what do we do when we scrimmage? Kevin, you want to try this one?
Sorry, struggling from a hotel and speaker.
Me too.
Yeah. No,
Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, players knowing where they need to be in space helps us be better coaches. So the better we can get them to understand where they need to be helps us in general.
Beautiful. All right, and I'm going to move on. Last question. So pick any red player and what's their role and how does their role change? Because now I've just given the other side of the field. How does the player's role change given a build up from half and attacking in the other? 7v7 game. Any red player you want, how does their role change? Hey, Katarina, I love that. Can I? Kaznetsova. Kaznetsova? Come on, Katarina, give me that pronunciation. That's Katarina Kaznetsova. Nope, she's not coming on. Anybody? Marcy, come on. You got an A+ tonight, so What's the difference? Pick a player.
Okay, from the red player perspective, when you've got the 5v6 versus 7v7 is, let's see. Well, your coverage ends up, obviously in the 5v6, you have more options in spacing. When you extend it out into the 7v7, we also, I think you changed some of the line spacing potentially too. So it's just opening up different opportunities and options.
Let me guide you a little bit. Given the formation that I've got set up in the bottom diagram, which is the team playing 7v7, what I've set up there is the team, it's the front 2/3 of a 1-4-3-3. The only team that's missing, or the only line that's missing, is sort of a back four, but I'm fudging the fact that the 5 and the 4 in red and the 8 in red form a triangle that would be the midfield of a 4-3-3. The front three, then I've got the 7, the 9, and the 11. So what's the 8's job when the goalkeeper gets the ball? I'm now back to that trigger again. The goalkeeper's got the ball. What's the 8's job?
From this perspective to move to that open space in the center.
Perfect. So she's now the front end of the diamond.
Right.
Right? What's the 8's job if we were playing in the attacking half? And I've got basically 5 reds, because I'm going to bring either the 5 or the 4 into the game, playing against the 5 white players. What's the 8's job here?
Supporting role on the attack.
Okay. Could it
From
be
the
anything
center.
else? Could it be anything else?
I mean, she could move up into a position to receive a pass to go in for the attack herself.
Excellent. And how is she going to know what her role is in that part of the game? Whose job is that?
Do you mean from the coaching exercise, or do you mean?
Yes, I do. Thank you. That's the magic word, because as long as we understand what we are telling the players and we say in this part of the game, here's your job. Here's who you play with. Here's who you don't play with. Here's the space that you operate in. Here's what you look to think about. Now we're taking the next step, which is we're not just playing X, Y, and Z. In this game, in this part of the field, we're building up from the goalkeeper in the bottom picture, and we're building up in the attacking half in the top picture. And the roles will change based on what part of the game we're in. And the more we can help players get comfortable understanding what their roles are, the more likely it is that the team will be a little bit more cohesive together. So the coaching piece is the key of this. It's really understanding roles is the key to coaching soccer, frankly. Once we help them understand where they're supposed to go and when and who to play with, then the thing looks a lot more organized. But we have to bring that message to the players. So
Can I jump in real quick?
yes, please.
So I'm curious if what I'm telling my kids is correct or not. So if for number 8, I would say for what I always tell my kids, for the left and the right mids, they should have 3 options to pass, either forward, backwards, or to the center. And so 8's job is to get open as an option for the 11.
Okay. The correct answer is, as long as the players understand what we're trying to help, as long as the players understand us and understand each other, there is no right and wrong answer to this, Mike. And I think, and I'm going to put my hand up as guilty as sin. When I first started coaching, I was always wondering, what's the way to coach XYZ? What's the magic formula that says when you play this formation, it's supposed to be played this way? What I've come to realize is that the formation itself is absolutely irrelevant. As long as the players understand how to attack and defend, and the team is organized while it's doing it, it doesn't matter whether it's different from somebody else's version of the game. So as long as your players understand what you want them to do, and it allows them some degree of success, and they don't seem to be frustrated by lack of understanding, then you're doing a good job of explaining what your style of play is. Is that comforting for you?
It is, yeah. And it's also situational and knowing your players. So
Yes.
2 years ago, I had an 11 that was so fast, he would beat that person 9 out of 10 times.
Okay.
So I would tell the 9 and the 8 to just go right to the goal.
Okay.
And get ready for a cross.
Fair enough. That's okay, because if you keep getting in front of the goal and scoring goals, why would you try to do too much else? I mean, that's the objective of the game, right? And if that's their skill, that's okay. So I think as they get older, you start to ask, how can we be a little bit more subtle and a little bit more sophisticated in the way we attack and defend, which then gets away from just playing the ball through the fast kid in the front. And that's really just a developmental piece. But, you know, there's a lot of, I grew up in a country where that was the first 6 options we had were kick it to the player in the front. So who am I to judge? I was good at kicking it to the guy in the front, but that was, I had an uphill climb trying to figure out how the game worked. All right. For those of you who'd like to just stay, I've got one more question. Given what I've just spent an hour and change talking about, why is it we don't get more game-based coaching in soccer?
Because the coaches don't give those opportunities.
I think there might be a little bit more to it, but I totally agree. That's probably the first thought. That goes back to my PE world. Drill, 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 play. Oh, you've done my drills. I'll give you 5 minutes to play. So that's, I grew up with that. And Steve's gone for the fear. Steve, you want to jump in? Steve and Adrian are now getting off their seats. Come on, boys, jump in. What do you see?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep, you're good, loud and clear.
Yeah, I think just a bit of a fear of, like, for us all, letting things go a little bit and just letting people explore different things and not trying to overcoach. I think that was the biggest thing from yesterday for me when we were at Zanesville, is we want to kind of overcoach rather than letting the kids kind of play and figure things out a little bit more. And I think that some of that comes back to ourselves and the fact that we feel like and I'm guilty of it too, feeling we need to control everything and worried about kids not moving as much as they should do, or kids not working things out and it not working to a timeline that I've set for myself about how fast they should be learning. So that was why I said kind of fear. Is that okay?
I agree. That's perfectly legitimate answer, right? You know, because I think there's an expectation that coaches are loud and demonstrative and string pulling, and that's good coaching.
That's right. I was going to say,
sorry, somebody saying something there? I just checked out. Adrian, are you going to jump in?
Yeah, I think, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, I think, as Steve said, the control issue, which is sort of what I put in the chat there. But also, I think, based on the experience of working with a lot of teachers over the years, or pre-service teachers who are learning to teach all different types of sports, not just soccer, then it's easier for them to conceptualize very often technique type teaching. I think that the confidence to understand and to look at a game is something that takes some time to develop. And I think with young people who are learning about teaching and coaching, that's a difficult thing for them to get to initially. So the control factor also is linked in there. It's much easier to control a technique type practice than it is particularly with multiple games going on, multiple sports-sided games.
Don't leave. Let me give the background for the folk who. So Adrian is Dr. Adrian, works at Bowling Green State University in the sport pedagogy area. Stephen is Dr. Stephen, who works in the sport pedagogy at Ohio University. So you've got 3 people involved in the sport pedagogy area, but I'm going to go back to Adrian and ask you, when you're working with young PE teachers who are developing theoretically an awareness of sport, how tough do you see this for the people in the PE world who are coming in to game coaching? Because these are folk who theoretically should be a little bit more adaptable to watching game, but are you still finding the same problems that we do on the soccer field?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the other things that obviously a game-based approach is we're always trying to do with our teachers is to get them to understand, look, if you have knowledge of basketball, there's a lot of soccer that you can coach based on that element. I think a lot of kids pre-service teachers tend to specialize in one area, and they don't necessarily see the connection between similar types of invasion type sports, which they can actually use to their benefit. And getting them to do that, and as you would say, sort of open up a bit and be a bit more confident, is something that takes some time to get used to and for them to understand. So, yeah.
It's a challenge for us. And I think for those of you who are maybe at least now starting to think coaching in a scrimmage, I can do that. I think maybe the comfort that you would get from Adrian and Stephen and I here is that it takes time, it takes mistakes, but there's an awful lot of detail that goes into coaching games that I think is not appreciated, to the point where we could probably still work as hard, but we would do it in a way that would be context-based rather than just drill-based, as Adrian said. So perhaps just to wrap this up, this is a longer-term study for all of us. We just don't show up one day and we're good at coaching games. We have to go and develop the skill set and develop the knowledge, but that knowing that there's a part of coaching that we don't utilize as much as we should, maybe it gives some of you a new sort of a lease on what you might be doing in practices, and maybe there's that balance. Is not just drill and scrimmage, but it's where do you find technique in a game. It's a lot more about what's your role in the game in this part of the field. Are we in this part of the field or that part of the field? Have we got the ball? Do we not have the ball? What's your role? What can we help players understand about how to play the game better that deals with just applying little concepts about the game, but doing it positionally? So it's a little bit of a complement to just playing 3v3, 4v4 games, perhaps. As we get beyond 4, to me, it's that I need to put them in positions. Once I get past 4v4, I need people in positions. Then I'm being a bit more contextual in what I'm asking them to think about. So for what that's worth, that is all I have for tonight, unless people would like to stay on. Thank you for those who contributed, and even if you took a risk contributing, it's never easy. I'm going to come off of this, but are there any questions, takeaways, any thoughts? Because if people would like to leave, you're more than welcome to go. I've already stolen an extra 20 minutes, but if people want to stop and talk, we will sit and talk.
I had a question.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, I had a question about, coaching within small-sided games. I tend to find myself looking at many different aspects of what they're doing correctly or what they're doing wrong, and sometimes lose focus on the theme of the session that I'm teaching. How can you, isn't it better to stay more focused on just one theme when you're coaching within a small-sided game?
What age are we talking about? And give me an example of a theme.
U11.
What's the theme?
The theme could be, playing out of the back. So I'm focusing on the shape of the players as the ball is received from the keeper or a goal kick. What's their starting formation or shape? And then how do they move to get open from that? But then I'll jump to, well, they're just dribbling and losing the ball constantly.
Okay.
Instead of passing.
But those can be related, because part of building up is deciding whether to pass or dribble based on how much space is available in front. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So do you then have a conversation with them about what they're looking for before they get the ball, after they get the ball, when the decision is? And it could be that if the skill level is low, they may be so concerned with fighting the ball that the last thing they're looking at is, what am I going to do with it?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it does come down to not knowing what they're going to do with the ball until it gets to them. So they're not scanning before they receive the ball.
Would you say these kids are competent or beginners?
No, this is higher level.
Oh, all right, then I'll buy you, this is not a joke. Buy yourself a whistle,
Mm-hmm.
and anytime some kid doesn't look before they get the ball, make it a foul.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I like that one.
You want to
Yeah.
change behaviors in a hurry. They will not be happy with you for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but they will pay attention. And it's the quickest way I've found to get people over that hurdle. They don't look before they get the ball. Well, guess
Mhm.
what? This is how I'm choosing my methodology to change your behavior. It's a foul. You don't look, it's a
Yeah.
free kick.
So it's a free kick for the other team.
So
Yeah.
just give an indirect free kick to the other team. It's
Mhm.
it frustrates some kids, but it does work.
Mm-hmm. But in general, it's a better idea to stick with one coaching intervention throughout a small sided game. Will more learning occur, or should we pick up on all the faults that you see within the small sided game?
There's only so much you want to throw at people, but every player may have a different issue.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say, for argument's sake, Adrian, who's playing in the front, routinely doesn't move when
Mhm.
someone can play him the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Marcy's playing in the middle, and she invariably turns the ball to the inside of the field where there's space on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
That's individual coaching within a context of we're trying to build up from the goalkeeper to advance the ball and score goals. But within that context, I've got a challenge that Adrian has as a forward and Marcy has as a defender. They're both different positions within the same context of the game.
But different size of the ball.
Well, no, because Adrian's trying to get himself free so that we can pass it to him. And Marcy's problem is she keeps turning the ball to the inside of the field when if she puts it on the outside of the field, the next touch could perhaps be to Adrian. So they're
Mhm.
related concepts that are both part of the same. If you think about the game as, and I'll be general here because there's clearly a lot more to it, but you could take the game as we're going to spend some time building out of our end tonight. That's why I had the
Mhm.
two scenarios for you here. We were going to build out of our end and we're going to try to get the ball into the other team's end more consistently,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or we're going to play the ball in their end of the field. So what are the kind of skills you would need to score more goals? If we've got the ball over the halfway line in possession, now we're trying to build up to score a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Different skill sets. And again, different players will have different needs that within the context of that tactical scenario, well, I may be coaching 3 or 4 different players to cue them to participate better in the build-up or creating scoring chances.
So it depends on which third of the field.
Correct. If you want to go thirds, if you want to go halves, depending on whether, because I think you said 4v4, which I'm assuming is like the first game I had up here tonight with the goalkeeper, a left and a right in the front.
Mm-hmm.
But every player may have different need. Now, all the players may have the same problem. They don't look before they get the ball, or their first touch is into trouble, or they just kick it forward. They don't read pressure and turn around and circulate the ball. So there may be just group problems, or there may be individual problems that relate to that particular phase of play, which is built.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what phase of play is?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it may just relate to the phase of play, and then you may have 3 or 4 different areas within that phase that you're going to go coach Adrian because Adrian's got a problem getting himself free from a defender. You want to work on Marcy because Marcy's maybe right-footed and you're playing her at left back.
Okay.
So she keeps coming inside because she wants to go on her right foot. Well, maybe you just got to let her come in on her right foot, but she's got to be more aware of how to play forward more quickly with fewer touches, even if she's only playing with her right foot.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to help her succeed in her job in that phase of play.
Makes sense.
Right, so that's why the roles become really important. The more we know about our own style and how the players that we've got fit into it, there's a direct link then between what we do in practice and what we're trying to get them to do in games. So it just becomes a cycle.
Mhm. So you should have a definitive style of play, or at least a good idea of how you want your players to play, and then build your curriculum or your sessions around that.
Ideally, yes, but I'm going to make, I'm just going to make a blanket statement. I was coaching Division I college, and I think I didn't get that until I got an A license in 1990, and I don't think it was until about 1995. Is that right? Yeah, that's probably about right. I think it was about 5 years out of my A license. My head sort of went, okay, I know what I like, and I know how to get it. And it's always evolved, but it took a while. So I would say if you can't define your own style, write down what you say to your players when you come off the field. What you hear yourself saying to your players is starting to evolve your own style.
Okay.
And it might give you your starting point for thinking, do I really want that to happen? Am I seeing that happen? What am I doing in training that's making that more likely to happen? And then you're starting to develop a connection between what you think you want and what you're training. And that can be a fun process, right? I mean, it never settles because we always evolve, but we've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, it depends what the flavor of the month is or what have you.
It depends how many players you've got who are really skillful.
Yeah, what type of players you have, for sure. I mean, there are some teams that I've been very stubborn about playing out of the back when they just don't have the technical ability to do it. So is that something I should teach them?
How old are they?
U11s and U12s.
I would go at that age towards the more developmental mindset.
Yeah.
And maybe they pick and choose their moments where they play. Not maybe just part of evolving or perhaps the compromise between an idealistic style and just a reality of the players in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the patience to accept a lot of turnover goals,
Yeah,
you know, it's a good way to teach players how to play under pressure.
Yep. And if you do a lot of it in practice, there's more likely that it will get better over time, to the point where as high school players, they solve the problems faster. Steve, chip in, because I know this is right in your world right now with your young kids. Steve just put a text. I'm not sure, a chat. I'm not sure if you saw that, David.
I didn't see it. Let me see.
Chip in, Steve. Come on.
Well, for the latter point, I tend to sort of give it up a little bit if my goalie takes a punt and it gets us out of a bit of a jam. I think we kind of overforce kids to play out of the back. I mean, you even see it in the Premier League where Arteta's doing it with Arsenal, and sometimes it's to their detriment. And Rodgers at Leicester City, and sometimes and I think that teams have morphed even in the Premier League to playing that a bit more of a hybrid kind of approach. And I think that that's the way I do it with my kids. And I get Tom's kind of thing about developmental, but I think we can do a lot more work on training in it. And then as we see them doing it more and more in training, we can reinforce it, that they do it more and more in the games. Because my feeling with the young kids is if kids lose every game, they don't want to come back.
Right.
Because it goes back to Tom's point about scoring. They want to score. They want to not necessarily win, but they like scoring goals and seeing they've got success. And success comes from scoring goals. They don't necessarily see shutouts as success potentially. And so I think if you're playing out the back all the time and getting crushed 5-0 and it's not changing, even in the short term, it can be detrimental to the environment that you're trying to set up with your group. So I think at some point we've all got to be a little bit more well, you know,
Mhm.
what's the benefit of doing this? So I think that the way I approach it is we don't punt a lot in training. We try and play out of the back, but we in games. The flip side of it is we had a problem this year where teams would punt out of the back and the balls were coming in and our girls didn't know how to deal with it whatsoever.
Mm.
So we had to do a lot more punting out of the back in training just so that our girls got used to taking the ball out of the air and dealing with that kind of thing and winning the second ball. Because some teams we played against probably weren't as developmental in their mindset as we were. So we were getting into some trouble because other teams were just booting the ball and playing kind of high pressure knockdowns. And that was a problem that we then had that we had to deal with. So
Right.
we spent a lot of time trying to be a little bit more aggressive. So we've developed a bit of a hybrid style, to be honest.
Mhm.
Would I want my team to be having the perfect vision of playing out of the back, like Barcelona-esque and all this kind of stuff? For sure. But I think that if it's compromising the way that the kids are feeling about their performance and the way they perceive how we're doing with me as a coach, I think that I would give a little bit on that in order that, you know, like we do in anything, you know, you in a relationship you have to give and take, right? So
Right.
I give a little bit up on my idealistic style of playing in order that we can get a win every now and again. Now, if we're playing a team and we're blowing them out, I'm not going to keep insisting that we punt the ball to our best player up front and then she takes 3 players on, and you know, I'm going to get us to play a bit more. Or if I don't know much about, you know, we teach the situationist type of stuff. So I think that's the way I play it. And then going back to the other thing about playing out of the back, I mean, for me, I try and coach. If I'm coaching playing out of the back, I'll coach playing out of the back, and I think a lot of that comes from the way you set things up. So, you know, obviously, if you set things up in a way where the emphasis is on the goalie getting it, and you go back to when the ball goes out of play, the goalie starts with the ball and that kind of thing, you are emphasizing that playing out of the back within that practice. But as Tom said, you know, everything is related. So you can't just say, oh, well, I can only deal with this one thing, because there's a knock-on effect with a lot of other things. And so you do have to coach what you see as well as coach your topic. And I think, you know, it'd be remiss of us to have a person, you know, when you're supposed to be coaching a topic, make the same mistake over and over again, and there's not to do anything about it just because we want to stick on topic. So I think that, again, it's just having pragmatism in what we do as coaches. And, you know, I come from a professorial world, but at the same time, when I coach my girls, I take more of a pragmatist view of everything that I'm doing, you know, so that we can deal with what scenarios are in front of us.
I mean, based on the technical ability of the players that you have, you're more pragmatic.
Yeah. And, you know, I want my players to learn how to play out the back again, for example, if we're still using that theme. But, you know, the basic thing that I do is, you know, if my player gets it out wide, she can at least play it up the line, right? And or play it back to the goalie or whatever. But I've got a girl who's like 4'6", and she's not going to bang it up the line 50 yards to the centre forward to run to, right? So I have to kind of think about, okay, how am I going to deal with this situation? But anyway, I'll
Yeah, I had 2 quick questions before I jump off. So you had mentioned at the beginning that something had started in August. That's this coaching division of what it is that you do.
Talking to me, Marcy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, from you.
What was the question?
Yeah, you had said at the beginning of the session when we first started, you had said something about this started in August. So I wasn't quite sure what.
This is the third one. This is the Ohio Soccer Association started in August.
So there was no Ohio Soccer Association prior to August?
No, there was an Ohio South State Association and Ohio North State Association. So we merged and in August we became Ohio Soccer Association.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. And then you had also mentioned that one of the main focuses is coaching coaches to be better, right? Like that's kind of, so what are some other opportunities that we can tap into outside of these Zoom calls in order to do that? I mean, I'm working with Tony Earp, who's our director,
Yeah.
on one-on-one, and we're talking even about doing like larger, like lunch and learn type training scenarios with just in our organization. But are there other opportunities that Ohio Soccer Association provides?
We do actually. That was Stephen mentioned yesterday. I was down in Zanesville yesterday, and we did a clinic. I don't know. What do you think about 30 odd people, Steve? 30 plus. It's a good
Yep.
number.
Sorry, the teenagers just got home. Hold on just a second. Guys, I'm on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
So
we
where do I
that. We'll do
find?
clubs? We'll do club visits. If you want to do something with Tony.
Okay. All right. I'll talk to Tony. We meet right now. We're just meeting every Friday morning, which is nice.
I could do Friday mornings because right now I'm actually in Polaris because
Oh.
I'm meeting early and I got one tomorrow morning. So getting to Columbus and coming together with a group, particularly on a Friday morning, would be great.
Okay. So where are you based out of normally?
Cleveland.
You're in Cleveland. Okay. And then the last question was, you had said something about a statistic of 70% don't return or
Correct.
something to that effect.
Yeah, we lose about 70% of the kids by the time they get to about 13.
And
sports,
now
across
why?
sports.
And why do you believe that? I mean, what's the research say that? Because I mean, we're just at U11, but our team is for the lifetime of the soccer career of the girls that we've coached, which has been like the last 3.5 years. Because I mean, we're talking 4th, 5th graders, right? We haven't lost anybody. So for the most part, I mean, there's people who have like just decided to focus on one particular sport that's not soccer or something like that. That seems like a really high percentage. So I guess I'm wondering why, what's the main driver?
If you want to come into webinar 4 and 5, there'll be a lot of information.
Okay.
I can tell you that the general reason is adults don't understand kids.
Okay.
I mean, that's in a nutshell. As we coach, shouldn't say we. The people who turn kids off don't understand kids. The people who turn kids off don't relate to kids. The people who turn kids off think it's the NFL or some professional league where your job is to shout at people. Kids, that's not why kids participate in sports. So in general, because we as adults don't understand the motivations of kids and what makes them enjoy sport, a lot of kids go, I don't want to put up with this. And they quit. Not just soccer, it's across the spectrum of sports.
Okay.
So if we, and the research is pretty good on it and it's pretty consistent. Because Steve, we were laughing yesterday. I asked the kids, I always bring kids in at the end anytime I'm doing a clinic. I can't remember all the questions, but amongst the questions I said were these. Would you rather play in a game that was 10-0 or 2-1, win or lose? And unanimously, we'd rather play in games that are 2-1. Why? Because games that are 2-1 are fun.
Mm-hmm.
Second question, would you rather play in a shoebox or a place where you got a lot of time and space to make a decision? We don't want to play in shoeboxes. Okay. One little girl was bored and I brought her over to the group and I said, why did you give me that look that you just gave me? She said, this wasn't fun because the teams weren't balanced. So the kids played for 2 hours. I don't know, they were 10, 11 years old, maybe Steve. Yeah, 10, 11. They played for 2 hours. And you always say to them at the end, if this was soccer practice, would you come back tomorrow? And of course, they all go excited because they had fun playing, but all they did for 2 hours was play soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more specifics in terms of what they want from the game and what they want from practice and what they want from teammates and what they want from coaches that kind of get away from, we don't really care if we win, but we really do care if it's an enjoyable experience.
I completely agree with that. But I mean, that's how our girls are. I mean, our girls stay as a team because it's not just, it's also about because they're a team, right? It's friendships and socialization and, you know, those things too that
Number
matter.
2 reason, positive team environment, positive culture.
Yeah. Yep.
Positive coaching, positive culture. I work hard and people appreciate that. That's your top 3 reasons why kids play sports.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. And we do a lot of scrimmaging in our practice. I mean, we but that's because they want to play, right? So they're like, let's play. I mean, that's their first question when they get to practice every time. Are we going to scrimmage today? So, because they like to play.
That's what turned me on. I don't know, Adrian and I think we've known each other since I was in grad school and he was teaching a little bit at that point, but that was the thing that drove me over to from the drill game to let's just go game and maybe a drill, but maybe not game. It was any kid pulling on your shirts. Can we scrimmage? Oh, that's like kiss of death.
You mean to the coach? That's
a kiss of death when some kids are coming up going, come on, enough of this rubbish. Can we play?
But the games are what they it just gets them. It doesn't, I mean, anybody who's a sort of a games or a sports player, the thing that gets you going is playing in the game. And kids pick up on that really early on, and it's their motivation. I mean, I sometimes complain about my undergraduates and their level of motivation, but you get them engrossed in any type of game activity, and that's the thing that does it for them. I mean, they want to do it. It's really exciting for them. And, you know, that's the reason why all of us love to play. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I always have a trouble with people who are talking about, you know, fitness orientation and this, that, and the other. Yeah, running on the treadmill or cycling on a bike might do you a lot of good, but to me, it's not as much fun as playing in a game and participating and enjoying. And Tom and Steve, I think they both talked to that as well. You know, that's what it does it. So
yeah, I agree. Well, I have to jump off, but thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Good night, everybody. We'll put it to bed. See ya. Thanks. Appreciate everybody. Bye bye. Good night.
Thanks.
See you, Scott. See you, Mike.
Bye.
See you later.
See ya. Nick, tomorrow, Steve. That's 2 days in a row. You may as well go for a hat trick.
I know it's like too much.